All right, let me ask you a question. And I don't want you to answer this out loud, but I want you to think about this in your head. What is the most important thing in your life that you can't live without? Don't say ice cream. Or don't say cookie cake. Think about what's the most important thing in your life that you can't live without. Last Wednesday night, a lady committed suicide.
Oh, dang.
Right out here on the road, about a mile away from the church. That's why there were all these cop cars driving all around. So did anyone know about that?
No.
I don't know if it was while we were having church or not. There were a bunch of cop cars around after church. Emily saw them, and Hannah was here late that night, and she saw them.
I seen an article about on Facebook.
Was there like a checkpoint to drive through on the way home?
Yeah, they wouldn't let me take my, I had to drive.
There's only one thing that causes someone to commit suicide. It's when they've been counting on something in their life, when there was something that was really important to them that they couldn't live without, and it disappeared. Something happened, and they lost it, and they didn't want to live anymore. That's what causes people to do that. Everybody has sure things in their life that we feel that we can't live without, that we think will never fail us. Okay, some people really trust in their money. For some people, it might be their grades or their popularity or their success. For some people, it might be their jobs. For some, it's God or maybe other religions. But everybody has some certain things that they trust in, that they know this is what gives my life meaning. This is what I can rely on. And sometimes when those things fail, they decide they can't live without it. And they might be filled with despair, or some even do like what that woman did last week in their life because of it. So I want to spend actually a few weeks talking about how we focus on and trust in God as the most important thing in our life, because that's the only thing we really can trust. And to do that, we're going to look at an ancient leader of Israel named King Asa. Can you remember say Asa?
Usa.
Okay, we'll try again later. King Asa's story begins when the king that was before him died. And I'll pull up some verses here. It said King Abijah rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. And Asa, his son, succeeded him as king. And in his days, the country was at peace for 10 years. Now we're going to read tonight why his kingdom had peace. It said, Asa did what was good and right in the eyes of the Lord his God. He removed the foreign altars and the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. Okay, what are all these things that it's talking about right there? They're idols, yeah. There's an Asherah pole right there. Does anyone have an Asherah pole lying around at their house? Okay, you need to cut it down, Ben.
It's for Jewish reasons.
Okay. No, back in Israel's time, and that's what those poles kind of look like there. There's a guy chopping one down. They had all these idols all throughout the land. All these things that the people would go and they would worship. Doesn't that sound silly to us? That people would go and worship a statue and call that statue a god and say, oh, this is the thing that created me. This is the thing that takes care of me. And it's just like a block of wood that someone carved. Does anyone think that sounds really silly? Idolatry is the number one sin that's talked about in the Bible. So idols are statues or monuments to false gods. And you might think, well, since we don't have that kind of problem in America, we don't see people bowing down to statues very much in America. Maybe it's just not a problem anymore. Now, other countries do that. If you go to India, they have lots of little statues because they practice Hinduism. They believe in all kinds of God. And they have all kinds of icons and statues and pictures of all kinds of false gods that they really will bow down and worship to. We don't do that here in America, though, do we? And it's not really a big issue here in the United States of America. Actually, I'm going to show you tonight why America might be the most idol-filled country that's ever existed. Okay, you've probably heard some of this stuff before, but I want to say it again. We have to guard ourselves against worshiping idols today. Not idols that are statues or pictures of gods, but idols that are in our heart. Okay? Key point right here. Anything that comes between you and God is an idol. Anything that comes between you and God is an idol. Something that comes between you and praying to God. Something that comes between you and reading your Bible. Something that comes between you and going to church. All of those things are idols. So we actually can have a lot of idols in our culture then, can't we? They're idols of the heart. They're not idols of statues, but they're idols of our hearts. Idols are not usually bad things. Idols are good things that are turned into ultimate things. Idols are when you take something that's good and you make it the most important thing in your life. So we started talking about the Asherah poles a second ago. Asherah was a goddess of motherhood. Is motherhood a good thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Who's got a mom that they like, that you appreciate, who gave you life? Were we all born through a mother? Okay, motherhood is a great thing. But they made it the ultimate thing that was the most important thing in their society, and they would build statues about motherhood. That's what the Asherah poles were. So idols aren't usually about bad things. They're usually about a good thing that people bow down to and treat it as the ultimate most important thing. And motherhood's not the ultimate most important thing. Who is? God, right. God is the most important thing. So I want to tell you tonight why idols fail. And first of all, we all worship something, okay? That's an idea that we really have to get into our heads. Everybody worships something. And I was thinking about this because yesterday I was talking to one of my coworkers at the radio station. And she was saying a girl visited her church. She was talking to this girl. And the girl says, well, I don't understand why you guys do praise and worship. Because why would somebody worship something? Why would somebody worship God? What's the point? You know, she's asking all these questions like, why do people sing songs to God and stuff like that? Okay? The answer is, everybody worships something. We all worship something. When we're worshiping God, we're just turning our attention and our worship to the right place. But everybody worships something. If you go into India and you go into someone's home, let's say you walk into an Indian person's living room, all right? And you, in their living room, they've got an idol somewhere that's probably like in the center of the room, okay? They got like an idol. And all the chairs, all the furniture, all the couches in the room are turned toward that idol. So when they sit down, they come into the living room and sit down, what are they looking at?
The idol.
Yeah. But everything in their house is oriented towards that idol. So when you go visit that person's house and you walk in, you can tell pretty quickly what's the most important thing to this household.
Idol.
Their idol, yeah. Now, if you go to a home in the United States of America and you walk into the living room,
TV.
yeah, you see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, TV.
All the furniture's centered around. I'm not saying it's bad to watch TV,
But you're not saying it's a good thing either.
but it's something that can very easily become an idol. It's something that can very easily take up our time. Where we're like, I don't know if I want to read my Bible. I think I'll stay up another 30 minutes watching this show and then go to bed.
Yeah.
That means TV is becoming an idol to you. So we all worship something, whether we realize it or not. We all worship something. Okay, so here's a picture, people bowing down to a statue. Pretty clearly, that's idol worship, right? Okay.
It is.
Not trying to make anyone upset.
Is that the Wii?
No, they're watching a sports game right there. But look, what are they doing?
Yeah.
They got their hands up in the air. Are people usually as excited about God as they are about watching a game?
Yes. Probably not.
I tried to find a nerd picture too of nerds with their hands up. Because nerd stuff, like what I get into, that can be. Oh, a Wii, that would have been a good one to throw. A Wii, yeah. Hey, what about right here? This person is meeting Matthew McConaughey, famous movie actor. No, what's she doing right there? That's worship right there. She's saying, ooh, that famous celebrity, I want to touch him. He's so special. He's so cool. Look at this dude. He's chaining himself to a tree. He says he loves the environment so much that if you want to cut this tree down, you're going to have to kill him. Okay? That's worship. Anyone who's willing to die for a tree is worshiping a tree. Because your idol is something you would die for. Okay?
Maybe he doesn't want the thing to die.
Yeah, but he's making it too important. He's making it more important than his life. But all these things are forms of worship. Everybody worships something. And you know what? It's really easy to spot other people's idols. It's really easy to look at a tree guy here and think, oh my gosh, what a moron. But you know what? We have our own idols too. It's easy to spot other people's. It's a little bit harder to spot ourselves sometimes. But sometimes they have to fail for us to recognize them because idols do fail. Okay? Point number 2. Trusting in idols will rob your peace. I was actually reading a book this week and it was talking about idolatry. And it was talking about how some countries make their military their god, their idol. And I thought, well, how do they do that? Like, I thought that was kind of strange. And then I remembered, actually, I was reading this book about a month ago about nuclear bombs. It was called The Day the World Went Nuclear. And it was talking about when they dropped the nuclear bombs in Japan. Okay, and it said in there, when the Japanese emperor decided to finally surrender to the United States, there were a ton of Japanese people all across the country that killed themselves the next day because their military was surrendering. So that was their idol to them. They thought it was so dishonorable to surrender, to fail. They would just rather die because their idol had failed them. Money's also a huge idol. Back in 2008, there was this big economic collapse. A lot of people lost a lot of money in the housing market due to just these, I don't really understand how economics works, but a lot of people lost a lot of money, and a lot of people were doing all kinds of crazy stuff like jumping out of buildings, driving their cars into lakes, because they lost so much money. The CFO of a company called Freddie Mac, the chief financial officer, hung himself in his basement. The chief executive of Sheldon Good, which is a real estate firm, went out into his fancy car, he had a Jaguar, and shot himself in it. Bear Stearns executive leapt up the 29th floor of his office building. Okay, none of those guys had any peace in their life, did they? Their idol was money. Their idol was money. They lost their money, and they saw no reason to live anymore. And so they just jumped off of the building. Their idols failed them. Their idols couldn't take care of them. They thought they could rely on this one sure thing, and it fell apart. I know I'm talking a lot about suicide tonight, and that's kind of the extreme form of this. But I want you to ask yourself this tonight. What is it that makes you feel despair? What makes you feel hopeless? Or what makes you feel a lot of sorrow? Those things can clue you in that that's what your idol might be. There was another Wall Street guy. At the same time all this was going on in 2008, there was this guy named Bill who worked in Wall Street, and he also lost a bunch of money. But he had become a Christian 3 years earlier. And people came up to him and they said, Bill, how can you keep going? You lost all this money. Like, how do you keep getting up every morning? And he said, I have Jesus. I've never been happier. He said, I don't care about all that money because I have Jesus in my life. Your idols, if you trust in your idols, they'll rob you of your peace. But if you want to make sure you have peace, you have to make God your sure thing. Everybody has a sure thing that they're relying on. When you make that God, instead of trusting in anything else, you'll finally have peace. Here's what it says in what Asa did. It said he commanded Judah to seek the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and obey his laws and commands. You can't serve God and idols. It doesn't work that way. I know some people try to say, well, I serve God, 6 days a week, but on 1 day a week I want to do other stuff with my life. Or people say, well, actually, it's usually the other way around. People serve God 1 day a week and go to church, and then the rest of the week they don't even think about God. It's kind of the opposite for some people. You can't serve God and idols. You can't say, God, I'll give you 1 day or I'll give you 2 days a week, and then serve something else the rest of the week. You might say, well, why is that? Imagine for a second, okay, I'm married to Emily. Let's just imagine that you walked into a restaurant and you saw me, just sitting there having dinner with some girl who's not my wife, okay? And you walked up to me, Luke, aren't you married to Emily? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm still married to Emily. I'm just with this other person.
This is a very specific example.
They're like, well, don't you love Emily? Like, isn't she your wife? Don't you love her with all your heart? Well, I still love Emily. I'm just hanging out with this other person too. I can love more than one person.
Your best friend.
Okay. Would that fly with any of you guys? Like, would you say, oh, that makes sense? No, you'd be like, that's stupid. You can't say you love your wife and then go date other people. That'd be dumb. That's how a lot of people try to treat God, though. They say, well, I worship God 6 days a week, but 1 day a week I just want to do my own thing, have my own time, take a break from God. Doesn't work that way. You can't serve God and idols. You have to pick one or the other. It said, Asa removed the high places and incense altars in every town in Judah, and the kingdom was at peace under him. He built up the fortified cities of Judah, since the land was at peace, and no one was at war with him during those years, for the Lord gave him rest. He got all the idols out of his kingdom, and what did they have? Peace. They had rest. Making God your sure thing is the only way to have peace in your own life. You can't have peace in your life until you get rid of all the idols, because eventually they'll fail you. You can't have 90% trust in God and 10% trust in money. You won't have peace. Somebody once asked James D. Rockefeller, 100 years ago, James Rockefeller was the richest man in the whole world, had more money than anyone else. And someone went up to him and they said, James Rockefeller, how much money is enough money? And he said, just a little bit more. You know, if someone has money as their God, it'll never satisfy them. They'll just want more and more and more all the time. Money will fail you. Your government will fail you. Sometimes even your friends and family can fail you. Anything that can be an idol can fail you. But if you put your trust completely in God, you'll have peace. Emily, can you play for a few minutes? I just want us to do a little altar call time tonight. I'll give you just 3 or 4 minutes here. Idolatry is the most common sin in the Bible because we all struggle with it. Every single one of us who's a human being has to struggle with idolatry, of not letting other things become more important to us than God. But God loves us so much, he always wants us back. You know, if like what I was saying about Emily before, if I keep dating other girls, Emily's going to get sick of me and not want anything to do with me anymore, right? But God always wants us back. He'll always take us back when we turn back to him. So here's what I want you to do tonight. Ask God to reveal your idols to you. Say, God, I'm not sure what the idols in my life are, but ask God to show you what that is. What is it that makes me struggle to have peace? And I want you to ask yourself that tonight. What is it that makes me struggle to have peace? Is it worrying about my future? Is it worrying about money? Is it worrying about where I'm going to spend eternity? What's causing you stress? That's not how God wants you to live tonight.